Trends and Insight department at Jacob Paris office, and we're the agency who helped the organizers of the convention come up with the disconnect concept. And we felt that spiritual living was a very key part of this. We've been talking about balance and peace and mindfulness as part of a bigger wellness movement for a while. And basically, this is going to be the next step in wellness, spiritual living. Before I start, I'm going to give you a few numbers for background, just so you understand why we're talking about this and why we're talking about it now. So you may have heard of the age of anxiety. We live in a world of political unrest, of potential environment collapse, of unaffordable housing, of a lot of constant technological advances, all of this which makes for a very uncertain future. So in times like this, like for instance in the US, sales of books related to anxiety have gone up more than 25%. And in the UK, you can find Xanax, it's the second biggest market where you can find Xanax. So usually in uncertain times, people turn to religion to find solace, and apparently traditional religions don't seem to answer people's questions today and soothe their worries. And the number of people with religious affiliations has been dropping. In the US, non-believers are forecast to increase from 59 million in 2010 to 111 million in 2050. That's almost double. And in Europe, from 140 million to 160. In the US also, 1 in 4 young adults under the age of 30 don't believe in any religious tradition, and they prefer to refer to themselves as atheists or agnostics. And also Gen Z, so the youngest generation, is forecast to be the first post-Christian generation. Before I continue, can you hear me okay? It seems like it's echoing. It's fine? Okay, ça va. So instead people are turning to hybrid spiritual mashups to cater to their own personalized beliefs. They're turning towards the supernatural, the magical, to sort of find meaning in their lives. So for example, 68% of Australians have spiritual beliefs, but half of these don't identify with a religion. In America also, 20% of people think of themselves as spiritual, but not religious. That's up 8% in 5 years. And again, the young generation, 69%, believe in a non-physical realm. So they believe in something, but not in a religious way. So what does it mean for interiors? Spaces will try to cater to this really high demand and set the stage for introspection and contemplation. And the hospitality sector especially will embrace this trend with spiritual escape is on the rise. And now you can, in some places, you can get spiritual healers on room service. You have crystal spas and all these sorts of things. And also we'll see digital tech will help this idea of trying to transfix. So now let's look into it and see how you as architects and designers can cater to this demand. So first we're going to look at the cultural context and the consumer landscape to see concretely what does this look like. The first step to spiritual living is connection to the self. That's why we're talking about the connect. This starts with isolation, spaces where one can find privacy and space for contemplation. Meditation, more and more people meditate. It generated 1.2 billion in revenues just in 2017, and more people admit to meditating weekly or daily, and big companies like Google or Apple or others in the influential sphere are adopting meditation programs within the office. So just so you know, that's a 250% increase in just 5 years from the people who say they meditate. So we need spaces to meditate and close ourselves off from the rest of the world. So we're seeing a lot of pavilions and retreats that are providing seclusion and positive isolation. You see meditation specialty studios everywhere. There's Inscape in New York, Mon in Tokyo. You even have meditation buses in a lot of big cities. This actually is not a meditation studio. It's a Buddhist shrine in China that opened last year. Bee Breeders, the architecture competition organizer, has also announced the silent meditation forest cabin competition earlier this year, so it's very recent. And the pitch goes, the cabin's main purpose is to help guests enjoy silent meditation where the only sounds they would hear would be the sounds of nature, allowing them to let go of the external world and reconnect with their souls. But essentially connection to the selves, I mean loneliness, but being lonely in a very positive way. The image on the right is from a French designer from Design Academy Eindhoven, who unfortunately there's no picture in the setup, but it's basically a capsule that you could install on buildings in the cities, and it sits off the roof and off the facade. So it gives you a new perception on the city, and it gives you a space to breathe and go to retreat like in busy times. So yes, architects are going to have to think how they provide spaces for loneliness within cities. So could this take the form of empty design, going beyond minimal design? This is The Life House by John Pawson, which was intended to immerse the visitor in a zone of extreme calm. It's a retreat complete with a contemplation chamber, he calls it, and it's meant to purify the mind. And it's interesting, this is by a Polish magazine and studio called This Is Paper, and it's their first venture into hospitality. They opened this apartment in Warsaw, and what I find really interesting in this is that a few years ago we designed hotels to look like warmer, like to look like homes. We called it the housewarming trend back then. And now we're going the complete opposite way and going into empty design and making hospitality as empty and mindful as possible. Rituals will be the next cornerstone to spiritual living, and designers will investigate the narrative potential of objects to not only design products but also design gestures. So we're looking at the rise of beauty ritual kits using ancient Ayurvedic methods or Roman traditions to create these new ritual to relax the muscles after a workout, or to illuminate, or to relax the body and mind. This was presented in Milan. It's by bathroom manufacturer Laufen, who partnered with a bunch of designers, and especially one tea designer, to create some bath infusions. So they're taking this idea of the recipe for the cooking, but applying it to the beauty. And also, we're getting more and more comfortable addressing, talking about, and designing for death. This is a coffin that provides humans with the opportunity to acknowledge the transformation from one life to another, like from death into a new life. It's basically made from biodegradable materials. The rope is coated with spores, which is basically fungus. So when the body is buried, the fungus accelerates the decomposition process, cleans all the toxins, because in 2018 our bodies are pretty toxic with all the creams and the stuff that we put on it. And it then brings us back into the cycle of life. You can plant a tree instead of a stone to change the symmetry. It's also changing the whole rituals of the burying. Like, you plant a tree instead of putting a stone, so you're changing the symmetry into a beacon of hope. And also there's this idea of like also spiritual craft in a sense, because when the family or the close ones make the coffin, it provides healing and acceptance, as it's a therapeutic method. So as millennials turn away from Christian religions or like all sorts of traditional religions, they're actually turning to astrology and tarot cards instead, and witchcraft practices have increased considerably in recent years. The Me Too movement has had a huge impact. Riding this wave of feminism, women are reclaiming their power, almost like even their magical power. So recent studies indicate that there may be at least 1.5 million of witches in the US alone. And we're seeing new subscription services with also spiritual healing and all that. There are over 2 million posts on Instagram with the hashtag Witches of Instagram, which I think is quite mind-blowing. The Hood Witch, for example, is a bona fide witch influencer. She has over 329k followers. And this is a portrait series called Major Arcana, The Witches of America, which is on show in New York right now, looking at those figures, the contemporary witch. And this also means harnessing all the different powers of crystal. Google Trends say that the Google searches for crystals have gone up 40% in the past 4 years, so that's quite interesting. So in terms of materials, we're looking at all those different crystals and the power that supposedly comes with them. And also lunar inspirations. This is mostly for women in the room, but I don't know if any of you know, but in early societies, women's menstrual cycles were aligned to the moon, the cycle of the moon. And there are more and more subscription services and designers who are looking at this as women are trying to go back to this natural cycle and align themselves to the moon again. So indeed, astrology and the outer space are other strong considerations, the sun in particular. We've become more aware of light's ability to influence our circadian rhythm, and we're trying to design lighting systems that align, again, with the natural cycle of light. This is in Norway. As you know, over there, in the winter, there's hardly any sun. In the summer, it goes up considerably. So this is a hotel that tried to find a way, because Norwegian people are used to this, but visitors, they're not. So this is a way of easing the, the seasonal affective disorder for tourists. So in the lobby of the hotel, they installed this huge installation, which is like a sun, it changes also throughout the day to help easing this situation, which is a very interesting idea. This is another project called From Dawn to Dusk, and in the shape, this light in the shape of a sun goes up and down the pole and changes color also throughout the day that you can put in your home. These are other projects along those lines. This is a levitating clock, also tied to the idea of the sky. The designers say it's a metaphor for our planet revolving around the sun. So just like witches are becoming mainstream, shamanism is infiltrating more and more of our daily lives. But we're going beyond yoga, meditation, breathing workshops, and now new practices that you can find in big cities go from cacao ceremonies to aura photography or even psychedelic drugs. And in New York, there's a new co-working, co-living space, so it's a hotel and a place of business, which offers this spiritual environment. And I'm going to show you a short video of its founder, Rodrigo Nino, who's a Colombian entrepreneur, and why he started it.
In 2011, I was diagnosed with stage 3 metastatic melanoma cancer. It was like waking up to my worst nightmare. And after 2 surgeries, traditional medicine left me with a prognosis that was very bleak. And I was very rational and numbers driven. I'm an economist and a real estate developer. And I really couldn't find the answers that I needed in the secular world. I had no choice but to venture into the unknown. And that came in the form of an ayahuasca experience deep in the jungle in Peru. Ayahuasca induces what scientists call a mystical experience. Really, what I found in the unknown was that it was more familiar than my idea of home. It also felt more real than this physical reality I knew. And then I experienced this sort of field of invisible energy that somehow binds all living things together. Finally, I felt that I had this spark of light within that some people call soul or spirit, and how we had forgotten that we had it. The more I explored, the more I really found myself. And as I realized that there was a higher expression of myself, my fear somehow completely disappeared. And I realized that there was really nothing to be afraid of. And with that realization, I came back to New York. And I saw how this experience really showed me how we as individuals live within the confines of the physical mind. And how that journey that I went through was really not one of exploration, but one of remembrance. It was like going back to something I already knew but that I had forgotten about. That knowing and the resulting radical urge for serving that I also got from the experience made me change my real estate business into one of crowdfunding of commercial real estate.
Sorry. It goes on and it's very interesting. But what I wanted to say is that it's really, really fascinating that a place of business like this holds lectures and ceremonies with spiritual leaders like Deepak Chopra or Eckhart Tolle. And it's all set, in terms of design, it's all set again, all these backdrops of spiritual imagery and living walls and all that. Like, as if it was becoming a sanctuary for a connected life with disconnected life within the connected world. So going back to products and objects, infusing narratives into them is going to be another key element of a spiritually charged environment. Designers and manufacturers are investigating furniture as a road to escapism, and you see installations, oniric installations, like celebrating the joy of dreaming and all that. So, for instance, here, these projects evoke like a sort of journey to stillness. They have names like ghost, dream, and escape. And this was a project last year, or this year actually, by Cartier in Paris. They partnered with a German climate technological company. And they created this glass tube installation with an artificial cloud inside. So when you walked up the staircase above the cloud, you could smell l'envol, meaning the flight, which is the latest perfume from Cartier, prompting you to imagine the smell of the sky. So it's really the idea of like multi-sensory magic that you can apply to spaces. Also, this is by a Polish artist in the US right now. Her idea is to bring the audience closer to the sky experience. And with our lives mostly viewed through screens, we're also seeing 2D and 3D completely merging, and now 3D renderings are becoming common practices for editorial campaigns. They're really changing this idea of still life. And also the opposite, installations, real-life 3D installations are looking like they're 2D, so it's really changing our boundaries, creating a sort of mystery. And I find it really funny, like how every time you put a sphere somewhere, it looks straight away a little bit spiritual. So designers are really playing with this idea. And this is by an LA-based photographer. He's taking his photography into 3D experiences. So you can literally step into his photographs that he's applying to spaces. I also want to show you a few meditative installations that are intentionally designed to induce a calm, contemplative state. In Melbourne, this large-scale LED installation uses motion tracking to translate your movement into sound and light to guide people into a state of calm. And there are beds underneath that you can lie in. And this is by South Korean artist who uses take to create meditative healing art. And she says that light is the new ink, which is very interesting because we're designing with light more and more in interiors. Going even further, in 2019, a new wave of consumers are going to go beyond multisensory experience and start hacking their bodies and mind to go into the next step for wellness. So we'll use technology to expand our mental horizons and maximize this idea of wellness. So we'll see new ways of accessing the subconscious, creating lucid dreaming or even hallucinations. It's a sort of self-discovery tech, mystic tech. This is called Dormio, and there's a growing interest on the ability of lucid dreams. Only 20 or 30% of people are natural lucid dreamers, but now new tech is allowing you to sort of hack your sleep. This is like a glove that you put on, and when with like sensors and trackers, when it senses that you're moving from towards the deeper stage of sleep, if it says the word, if it says, I'm not quite sure how it does it, but if it puts the word dog into your brain, you're going to have a dog in your dream. And this also is a headband by a Dutch startup, which has the same principle, working with light and sounds. So we're going into trying to control our dreams and our subconscious. And this is an AI-powered hallucination machine that was built by the University of Sussex. They did it to study the effects of hallucinatory drugs, but without the changes of the chemicals in our body, so they can really observe it very objectively. And this is AI as a tool for self-discovery. This designer created a mirror it's basically an AI-powered avatar of himself. So he's speaking to his mirror, but he's speaking to himself, and the artificial intelligence is learning from these conversations and can confront him with his own thoughts. So he can learn from himself. And I'm going to leave you with, I'm going to end on a few questions. With the advancement of AI, new beliefs in a form of superior life are arising. So what are the religious implications? Will machines be the new gods? It sounds very far-fetched, but tech is already creating miracles. There are bionic implants that have helped people that were paralyzed for 4 or 5 years walk again, for real. And there's a former Silicon Valley engineer from Google and Uber. His name is Anthony Lewandowski. I'm not sure how to say it, but he's already founded the first AI church, and it's called the Way of the Future. So could a digital religion be the next religion? So back down to earth for now, I'm going to take you quickly through the design directions, what it means in terms of colors, materials, shapes, all of that. So materials, we'll see a lot of stone, black stoneware, charcoal, all smoked with ancient wood firing techniques. We'll see honed stones and crystal, mica, Himalayan salt, rock salt, quartz, silica. We'll still see a lot of marbles, but it'll be textured, carved, sculptured, really heavy. Hand-dyed sand also, and wild sand, natural wild sand, which is emerging as a strong direction. We have so much sand on the planet, and designers are starting to use it in very interesting ways. Also salt crystals. Glass, which is good for creating utopian aesthetic, creating this virtual, real, the changing, the disappearing, appearing. And light also, as I said, that plays a key role, shimmering sparkles and like cosmic fragments, and they really bring glamour to interiors when they're used from floor to ceiling. And iridescence will remain an important direction with refractions and color-changing effects. In terms of shapes, they will really evoke stillness and balance, so they'll be either very light and airy or heavy and grounded. We'll see pure lines and clean curves. We'll see celestial symbols like crystal balls or energetic gemstones also. And shapes will really borrow from all traditions from across the world, ancient wisdom tradition from South America, the Middle East, Patagonia. Here it's Africa on the left, and on the right it's Persia. And in lighting, Art Deco geometric shapes will also give this spiritual feeling like talismans or totems. We'll also go back to the elemental and the primitive This is a console table on the left that has this, it's almost like an altar. And the candelabras are like about my height, so they have this majestic feel. And we'll talk about modern mythology also. This is Karl Lagerfeld's first collection of furniture, which was just exhibited at Carpenter's Workshop Gallery. And it clearly references Greek architecture. And that was Caesar stone in Milan. Also this, by Sun Architecture, it was also this idea of the altar and the arena around it. And in terms of print and pattern, the desert will be a strong inspiration. Like those empty pieces of land and all the far-reaching horizon lines. This is a series of photography in the American Midwest, and it's all analog. It's all through filters, so it's got this psychedelic feel, but it's not digital at all. And also religious references from the past mixed with digital compositions will create contemporary patchworks that have this tribal, almost primitive quality. And we'll see astrological references also. And these are Persian rugs that have seen years and years of history that are translated into contemporary coffee tables or dining tables. And we'll also look at updating ritual aesthetics. So this is a prayer mat, for instance, on the left. And I'll also give you a few action points, like future strategies of like the things to use to create these, to answer consumers' spiritual cravings. Tell stories of wonder. Use narratives built around messages of magical powers or ancient wisdom tradition. Refer back to African mythology or South American paganism, Middle Eastern traditions, and other folklores from different parts of the world. Believe in magic. Appeal to today's growing tribe of contemporary witches, but be genuine. Some brands have seen the experience where they tried to, like Sephora did some witch starter kit. They actually pissed off a bunch of real witches. They had to pull the product from the shelves. So be genuine, believe in it. And design for all senses. Create richer experiences. For instance, a leather that's got a very strong smell with some surfaces that are very tactile. Create an experience with the product. Create mystic experiences, engage consumers by tapping into their enthusiasm for scientific frontiers. So spending on experiences outpacing spending on products. So explore new technologies that can help you take this to another level. Think hypnotherapy or magnetism, subconscious writing. How do you integrate these into the built environment? And that's particularly interesting if you do installations or if you do temporary events. Also, embrace quiet. Dare to go beyond minimalism and leave space for pose and contemplation. And finally, give meaning to objects. Products should be imbued with symbolism as new heirlooms of artifacts for the future. So less but more meaningful. And just a few examples of how all these components can come together in interiors. And that's it for me. Thank you very much.